Joining us now, let's talk a little football. From Pro Football Talk, our friend Mike Florio is back here, the creator and editor-in-chief of Pro Football Talk. How you doing, Mike?
Doing great, Rich. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. We were just, opened the show talking about Willie Mays. Do you have any thoughts, recollections of him? Mean anything to you, your family, anything like that, Mike?
Most of his playing career was before I was paying attention to baseball. There's no highlight like the World Series catch, and then the throw, getting rid of the ball.
Yeah.
It was one thing to get to the ball, but you still got to get rid of the ball. You got runners on base that you're trying to keep in place or at least get them out. But the presence of mind as soon as he caught it, the turn and get rid of it. There's that clip making the rounds of him and Vin Scully, and I still have a hard time understanding how they never met before 2016, but that's how it's being sold, that was their first ever meeting, and Scully going on. And there's some catch that Willie Mays made at Wrigley Field that sounds as good, if not better, than the World Series catch. It just isn't preserved for all time via video, as things often were back in those days on baseball games. But just one of the all-time great players in any sport, really.
Yeah. And the Giants are actually in Wrigley Field right now, of all places. Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is the story, do you think, right now as everybody hits vacation in the NFL? Mike, what is that for you?
Well, this ongoing Sunday ticket trial is a pretty big deal, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal. And it's amazing because it was just kind of out there and not many people were paying attention to it. And now, with the slow time coinciding with people like Roger Goodell and Jerry Jones testifying in open court. Goodell's been the commissioner since 2006, and he had never testified at a trial in open court before. There's been deposition testimony, there's been congressional testimony, but never in a trial in open court. We'll see what happens. Yesterday, the judge went off on the plaintiff's lawyers without the jury in the room about how they've handled the case. So there's some drama building there, and it's falling into this gulf where offseason programs are over, and we're just sitting back really waiting to see, I think, does Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Love, and/or Dak Prescott get their contracts before training camp opens? 1, 2, all 3, or none of them? I think that's the one big thing from a football standpoint that we're paying attention to.
Okay, so let's take that one at a time. This case that you say that, a lot of folks might not be paying attention to, you are writing quite a bit about it. But outside of that, do you want to explain what it is and what the ramifications of what's going on could possibly be?
Very simple argument. And I think this is where the plaintiffs have gotten themselves into trouble. They've overcomplicated the case. It's a simple argument. Sunday Ticket has always been a premium product. It's always been available at a high price with one option, the whole shebang. Every game, every team, even though it gets marketed as, if you're a displaced Packers fan in Pittsburgh, this is the way to watch the Packers. You can't just buy the Packers. It's always been a very high price. And the case is about the argument that the NFL deliberately sets the price high, requires the price to be high, to protect the free over-the-air broadcasts in every market on Fox and CBS. That's what the case is about. The argument is that's an antitrust violation. The ramifications, if the NFL loses, would be beyond whatever the individual class members would get financially, and it probably wouldn't be much. But the NFL, I think, would feel compelled to make changes to the way Sunday Ticket is offered. It would be cheaper for the whole product, and possibly other options would be available. One team at a time, 1 week at a time, one game at a time, if that's what you choose to do. So that's kind of what's hanging in the balance. But, the NFL feels like it has a pretty good case on the law. On the facts, it kind of is what it is. The law, I think, is where the NFL is going to potentially find a way to prevail.
Is this a jury trial?
It is a jury trial. It is a jury trial. And there will be a verdict.
Where is it?
It's in L.A., not far from you, I think.
Okay.
It's out there somewhere.
Do I need to stand outside? Do I need to stand outside with a boombox like John Cusack or something like that, Mike? You tell me. Like, what am I doing here?
Look. Here's what could happen, and this is what people need to be ready for.
Sure.
Based upon what happened in court yesterday, there could be a verdict against the NFL that will make people say, "Holy crap," or something other than crap, and the judge could then turn around and say, "I'm entering judgment in favor of the NFL, notwithstanding the verdict, because I believe the law doesn't support this case." The case was already dismissed once, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reinstated it. It's been around for 9 years. It's a bunch of different cases brought together. It's like 2.5 million plaintiffs. But they could win, and the judge could take it away. And if the judge doesn't take it away, it'll get appealed, and at some point it'll probably end up before the U.S. Supreme Court. So it's been around 9 years. Hell, it could be around 5 more by the time it's all said and done.
So who's the fan that got really pissed off that started this whole thing? That's what it must be, right? It's what happened?
The Mucky Duck, a pub in San Francisco. Because think about whatever they charge fans to watch it at home, the charge they impose on bars and restaurants is even higher. So that's the lead plaintiff in this case, the Mucky Duck Pub in San Francisco. 2015 is when it all started. And, you know, look, Rich, I know from the moment I first became aware of Sunday Ticket, 1994, my first reaction was, I got to get this.
Of course.
My second reaction was, why do I got to pay for the whole thing? There's only one team that I want to watch whose games aren't regularly televised in my local market. So that issue's kind of been out there for 3 decades now. And I think it's fair for the law to provide clarity one way or the other, whether or not this is something that the NFL can do. Whether the NFL should do it is a different issue. Whether the NFL can do it is something that's never been resolved.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. Now let's get to the quarterback signing. Your ear to the ground. What are you hearing as a general reaction to the Trevor Lawrence signing?
Well, I believe and have believed for a long time that, and I'll start with Dak Prescott, the Trevor Lawrence deal has nothing to do with him. His leverage flows from the contract that he signed 3 years ago. It was specifically designed to force the Cowboys to extend it now. Big cap number this year of $55.4 million. And next year, if he leaves in free agency and they have no way to hold him in place, no franchise tag is available, no trade clause in the contract, he walks away as a free agent next year, they still carry $54 million in his name for 2025. The only way to handle those numbers and to get those in line is to extend his contract. And that's where his leverage comes from. The market doesn't matter. His leverage comes from his circumstances under his contract. So this thing has lingered a lot longer than I thought it would. I thought the Cowboys would get this taken care of. And the longer it goes, I think at some point the Cowboys decide, we're going to let you go to the market and see what else is out there, because we think at the end of the day, you're going to realize even if someone's offering you more, you'd still rather stay here and be the Dallas Cowboys quarterback for the entirety of your career.
Well, what's the reaction to the Trevor Lawrence contract? What are you hearing on that?
Well, I think Trevor Lawrence has more of an impact as it relates to Tua and Jordan Love. Those are the next two that I think as a practical matter are either going to get or not get a contract before camp starts. I don't expect Dak to. I think at this point there would have to be enough of a change from the Cowboys. It would be so dramatic that I just don't expect it to happen, given everything that's happened to lead to this point. With Tua and Jordan Love, and I'll start with Tua. I think he wants a market deal. He said a couple of weeks ago, the market is the market. And I think if you talk to the people who are representing him, they start comparing him to the guys who have gotten contracts that start with a 5. He wants a contract, I believe, that starts with a 5. Will Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, authorize a contract that starts with a 5? Or do the Dolphins say, you know what, we're going to offer you a long-term deal. Here it is. It starts with a 4, and you can either take it or you can play out the 5th year of your rookie contract at $23.1 million, and we'll see where we are next year. That's what I think the Dolphins are going to do. I'll be surprised if Stephen Ross authorizes a market deal for Tua Tagovailoa, because I still think we're kind of in this, we don't know which way he's going to go. He's still not clearly franchise quarterback. He's not a bust. He's in that middle category of he could be a franchise quarterback. We just aren't there yet. We'd like to be able to have more time to make that decision before we give him a franchise quarterback contract.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a fascinating development, and it's taken about, what would you say, 10 years plus for it to come home to roost. The collective bargaining agreement of 2011 that stopped this generational enriching from occurring with players who have played 0 downs in the NFL, and pushing it down the road to give a look-see for a team to make a decision on this quarterback. And we have seen how that's played out, that now the generational enriching is given to somebody who's proven it-ish, right? A little bit of ish to it, that you could see it. There's a smell test, there's an eye test that they've passed, but the actual proof in the pudding test still isn't there. And there's different levels of it. There's Burrow making it to a Super Bowl but being hurt around it. There's Justin Herbert, who hasn't won a single playoff game and he gets it, but because he's passed the eye test. And then there's Trevor Lawrence, who's beaten one quarterback, and it's Justin Herbert in the playoffs with some other iffy, Urban Meyer 1 year, injury the next, ascension in year 2. It's time to pay him. Like we're seeing some of that. There's Daniel Jones outliers. There's Jared Goff who gets it later on with a second team after getting it in this first team. I'm just wondering where you think this is going, Mike. Where is this going?
And Rich, as a general observation, it's why it's critical to process the initial reports of what the value of a contract is. And the folks who rush to Twitter to try to beat each other to the punch with the first tweet that says the contract is agreed to, here's the value, here's the guarantee. It's more important to wait for the full details, because within the full details, you can do an assessment for how long the team is really on the hook. I'll give you a couple examples.
Please.
Geno Smith, three years, $105 million. When you look at it, oh, wait, it's a year-to-year contract. The Seahawks can pull the plug anytime they want after a given year and move on. Daniel Jones, oh, look at this 4-year commitment. Well, it's a 2-year commitment. So a lot of Derek Carr. Remember when Derek Carr got his contract with the Raiders? $40 million a year and almost guaranteed. And they found the escape hatch. They deliberately designed the escape hatch for right after his first season. And they took it and they cut him. So that's the key. We see these big numbers, and the agents love those big numbers to be put out there because it makes them look good and it lets them get employed by new clients. The devil really is in the details. The truth is, forget the devil, the truth is in the details. And we try to break down the details so people understand what the commitment really is. So that's going to be the key for all these contracts. How long of a commitment is it really? When can the team pull the plug and move on as a practical matter from this deal? Secondly, though, you have teams that are in a tough spot. Like, look at the Jaguars. And I've said this about the Jaguars and the Lions with Lawrence and Goff. Who are they bidding against? Who out there is even in a position to put leverage on these teams to pay this kind of money? But I think what these teams are doing, they're betting on the player ascending. And if the player's going to ascend, we want to get in at a number that we know is going to be a hell of a lot higher if we wait too long. We're going to screw around and find out if we wait too long. And that's what was brilliant about what the Jaguars did. Get this deal done now and lock him in at 55 for a long time. Like the Chiefs locked in Mahomes at 45 for a long time. Lock him in at a number that seems high right now, but we know which way the cap's going. We know which way the market's going. And before too long, 55 is going to be, hey, that's a pretty good deal for Trevor Lawrence if he becomes the guy that they think he's going to be.
That's the question, is who's going to be the team, because Brockman's pounding that. I think my Chris, for lack of a better phrase, and yours, for lack of a better phrase, are kind of, lockstep, that some team is going to have to stare down the barrel here and say, instead of betting on the player and instead of using that betting on the player to actually spread the word in the locker room, we pay our own when they do what we think they can do future and what we see they are doing present in terms of being a terrific professional and member of the community. We're going to pay you. That they're going to place all that aside, hard-hearted, go into this thing and basically say, you're playing out the contract, and then we'll talk and roll the dice that way and potentially F around there and find out otherwise. And I'm wondering who that team's going to be and which quarterback is it going to be. Could it be the Dolphins and Tua right now? Is this the version of what Jerry Jones is doing with Dak, even though he really doesn't hold many cards, as you described earlier in this conversation? Who's that team going to be? Will we ever see that, Mike?
I think moving forward, the Cowboys with Dak are the most likely to do it, because I don't think they want to give Dak what it's going to take to get themselves out of this current salary cap jam. And I think they're confident that if it's time to go to the open market, whatever they offer is going to be enough that Dak won't want to give up what it means to be the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. They've used that affirmatively in the past to try to get guys to take less. Look at all this other money you can make. You just waltz right into the number one booth of a network when you're done playing if you're the Cowboys quarterback for your whole career. So I think that's part of it. But, the Vikings kind of already did it with Kirk Cousins. Not a young quarterback finishing his first contract or second contract, an older quarterback, but they let him go to free agency. And they had a number they were willing to keep him at. And he found more in Atlanta, and that's it. The Vikings had to move on to plan B. The one thing that hasn't happened yet, in the classic sense that I think you're referring to, guy who is good enough to continue to play for the team, but he wants too much. His rookie contract is expired, and the team says, we're not going to use the franchise tag. We're just going to let you hit the market, and we'll see what happens.
Yep.
And go ahead. Good luck. Godspeed if you find a better offer somewhere else. I thought the Giants were going to do that with Daniel Jones, and they didn't. They worked out the deal instead and then tagged for Saquon Barkley. I think they wanted to work out a deal with Barkley and tag Jones so they'd have that year-to-year flexibility because they weren't sure what he was going to be after that 1 year that he looked pretty good. But that's really the test, and it hasn't happened yet. I thought the Rams should have done it with Jared Goff in 2019. They made him market level, $33 million at the time. Look how much the market's changed. And 2 years later, they end up tucking an extra first-round pick into Matthew Stafford trade to get that contract off the books.
Let's crystal ball it. Let's really have a little bit of fun. And I won't hold you to it, but if you get it right, obviously I'll sing your praises. First $60 million a year annual value quarterback is going to be who?
60 will be Jordan Love. We haven't talked about that.
This year? This year?
It's either going to be him or Dak. I know you put the disclaimer there, but
sure.
There's no living it down once you say it.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I've already put the disclaimer down. You won't hold you to it. I mean, who you don't have a crystal ball, which is my favorite cliche.
If I had to guess.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, I would like to think it's going to be Dak, but there's a chance it'll be Jordan Love before that. And let me throw another one out there, too.
I've got one, if you want me to
At what point does Josh Allen go to Brandon Beane and say, dude, look, I'm making 45, and it's me and Mahomes. Now, they've reconfigured the back end of Mahomes' deal to move some money forward, so his cash flow is like Burrow. So I don't think he's knocking on anyone's door now. If anybody should be in a position to bang, bang, bang on the door, it's going to be Josh Allen. So wouldn't that be something if we get a weird curveball out of nowhere, that one of these guys that's currently slipping down and down and down the stack gets a new deal that is the one that pushes the market to a higher level? I wouldn't be stunned if the Bills do it with Josh Allen.
I'll give you one. What do you think of C.J. Stroud? If he does it again this year,
that's good.
You know, like he's 2 years away from it. You know, Purdy's going to set a new standard. You know, Love's going to set a new standard. You know, Dak's going to have to get settled at some point whenever the Joneses do it, because you know they're going to. They're going to have to some way. I believe that at that point in time, the upwardness will continue to climb, and Stroud will be the first one strolling in, maybe with an MVP or who knows, even a trophy, the way that they played last year. Not to overreact, but maybe it's him.
Well, they're the first team ever to add a 1,000-yard rusher, a 1,000-yard receiver, and a 10 or more sack guy in the same offseason. So they are doing what the Cowboys said they were going to do.
Yeah. At least someone in Texas is doing it.
At least one. They were close enough.
Right.
But Stroud's got 2 more years before he's even eligible.
Right.
So I think we get to 60 before the window even opens for him, and he'll be the high bar, whatever that is, 62, 63 at the time. I think he'll get there. You mentioned Purdy, and I made this point recently.
Yes.
Purdy's eligible after this season, and it's important to understand that the CBA is clear on this. The window opens after the regular season ends, not the postseason. Mm-hmm. One of these teams, I think, is going to be next-level genius, and I wouldn't put it past the 49ers to lay the foundation to do Purdy's deal. Let's assume they make it to the playoffs as they have every year since 2019, except 2020. Mm-hmm. Go to Purdy and have the deal ready to go right when the regular season ends. You take the injury risk off of him for the playoffs, and he understands what can happen during the playoffs as it relates to injury. That's how he suffered that elbow injury in the NFC Championship, and lock him in at a number in that window between end of the regular season and start of the postseason. Because, Rich, the one thing that teams, I hope, have learned this year, it never gets cheaper. So the moment the window slides open, that's when the 49ers should sign Purdy, and then next year, that's when the Texans should be ready to sign Stroud. You get a great quarterback, you sign him the first day he's eligible for a second contract.
Well, I mean, the only analogy I would give here is it's like proposing to your spouse. You better get a yes when you hit the floor. You hit that one knee. and you propose, he better say yes, because could you imagine a quarterback says no to that and what the conversation is on a week-to-week basis if that gets out, you know?
Well, but look at Purdy, last guy taken in the draft, salary next year of $1.015 million in
goodness.
25.
Right.
So what's he going to, they offer him something close to the top of the market with a huge guarantee, injury guarantee, and full guarantee, and he's still got games left to play in his third season in the postseason. It's going to be hard to say no to that and say, nah, I'll just play for $1 million. But Rich, you make another point.
Yes, sir.
You know, Kirk Cousins didn't strategically become a free agent in 2018. He was put in that situation by Washington because they franchise tagged him at $20 million. They offered him a multi-year deal at 16. What's he going to do? Accept that? No, I'll take 20, and then I'll take 24, and then I'll become a free agent. I'm waiting for the day that a quarterback makes it known fairly early in his career. You know what? I'll give you my 5 years under my rookie contract. You can tag me once, you can tag me twice, and then I'm out. I'm gone. And it becomes kind of like an NBA thing where I'll put in my 7 years with my first team, and then I'm going to go wherever I want to go. I feel like someday, especially as we get more guys coming to the NFL with more money in their pocket from college, there's going to be a guy that is willing to put in his 7 years with one team, and then he wants to go somewhere else after that.
Great chat, Mike. Yeah, I ask you where it's going. That's where a lot of this stuff is going. Appreciate the 2 cents. Chat shortly. Thanks again,
All right,
Mike.
thanks, Rich.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.